day, everyone. My name is Mădălin, and in this session, I'm going to introduce you to a work I've been doing since the beginning of this year, since January, on the cooperation between the European Union and the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. It is a topic that is in between international relations and EU studies, and I'm going to introduce you in three main areas. First of all, which are the main points in the development of the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. Secondly, how the cooperation between the European Union and the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation was going. What were the main points in the timeline of this cooperation. I'm going to provide you a more recent input on the support and the cooperation in practice, especially in times of emergency with the current situation with COVID-19. And last but not least, we are going to focus on the situation of the EU member states from Central and Eastern Europe, which are present in that region, but less engaged and less involved than other member states. This is why we are going to look into this aspect in the last part of the presentation. Before starting, I need to have a disclaimer related to the support that this material has been receiving through a project, researcher, entrepreneur on the labor market in the field of intelligence specialization. And I also have to mention that the opinions, remarks, conclusions, and other observations that I make in this presentation do not reflect the positions of those financing this project, of those implementing it, and of those that are partners in these projects. This is an individual endeavor, and these aspects are concerning mainly the author of the draft paper that is presented here. There are some theoretical underpinnings that supports this paper. First of all, which I like to highlight, is that there has been in the past decade, or maybe 15 years, a lot of focus on comparative regionalism. It is a study that is somehow in between the areas of international relations and European studies, but it gained a lot of traction in the past years. Additionally, the work on multi-level governance at global level deserves attention. And in this area, I'm practically referring to regions and regional governance. Also, actorness. It is a topic that has been discussed in relations with especially the European Union since the 1670s. It has a long history of being discussed. Is European Union an actor in international relations or is not? This paper is based on the assumptions that it is. We will see in this paper three main aspects. One, it relates to development of the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. Secondly, we are going to look into the relations between European Union on one hand and the association from South Asia in the second part. And thirdly, we are going to have a closer look at the Central and Eastern Europe. More especially, we are going to check their diplomatic coverage in South Asia and to see how this is overall placed in the framework of EU SARC cooperation. The presentation is basically focused on exploratory and descriptive attempt. There are a lot of comparisons, but we'll move further because we need to advance. There have been, in the academic literature, if we are looking, there have been 4 waves of study of regionalism. First one, early regionalism is between the Second World War. There have been a lot of investigations, especially related to the colonial period. The second one, if we are looking closely, and probably is the most impactful, it relates to the regional integration debate and the alternatives to regional integration. This wave has a lot of influence in the area of European studies, but it is also developed and it is also gained a lot of attention in other parts of the world. Pan-Africanism in Africa, or the structural developmentalism in Latin America are some areas that have been included in this wave of regionalism. The third one is basically from the 80s, 90s. The main event is that we already moved into the post-Cold War period, and there are a lot of contributions. For example, the liberal intergovernmentalism is included overall in this area. And the last one, from 2005 or even later, depending on authors, it is related to comparative regionalisms, but it does not necessarily only compare the regions, but it looks a lot beyond a single region. It is multidimensional. It has rather an eclectic approach. Working paper by Soderbaum from 2015 describes these 4 waves, and it is good to mention them because it provides a framework for anchoring them in our study. The South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation has currently 8 members. It started with 7 in 80s, and in late 20s and 2007 it receives the membership of Afghanistan. In 80s there have been many developments in terms of regional cooperation, the case of South Asia being rather a particular one in a wider context. It started in 1985 with the Charter of South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, signed by 7 countries, as you can see in this presentation, in this slide. In 2004, there has been an amazing step forward with the signing of the Agreement for South Asian Free Trade Area, SAFTA, briefly. 3 years later, Afghanistan was becoming the 8th member, and have been a lot of developments in terms of institutions. We have to mention that basically this organization, it is a regional integration organization, despite the fact that compared to other initiatives around the globe, it is less developed. Less developed not in terms of economic development, but also in terms of institutional development as international organization. But it has the classical structure, we won't enter into it, and it has a lot of, specialized bodies that are focused on the needs from that area. We have, for example, if we are looking further, we are going to see that there is a topic of interest related to rapid response to natural disasters or crisis crisis disaster management, and it is relatively easy to understand it because it was in the after it has been developed, there have been a lot of crises in this area, from tsunami. We have the case for 2004, but also to other events. Consider, for example, the earthquakes that shattered Nepal a few years ago, or other events that had an impact, and they were mainly natural hazards. Further, the origin of the cooperation with the European Union goes beyond the Treaty of Maastricht. It goes to the previous relations that have been established between the member states of the European Union with the states, countries from that region. But these weren't institutionalized. If we are going further, we see that the bi-regional relations are based on few main steps, few main phases. In 1996, there has been a memorandum of understanding on cooperation between the European Commission and the South Asian Association. In 1999, there has been a lot of advances in terms of areas of cooperation on market access, on rules of origin, harmonization of standards, and in 2006, European Union becomes the first international organization that is an observer to the South Asian Association. But we have to mention also that this bi-regional cooperation is complementary to two more dimensions. One is the cooperation, as I mentioned before, between each state, interstate cooperation, and the second one between the European Union and each member state of from South Asia, which is based on different mechanisms, cooperation agreements. It's a lot of discussion here because we have to take them step by step, so we won't detail. European Union is a single international organization, as I mentioned, and is a single European entity with an observer status. Currently, there is a moratorium on the new observers because there have been interest from other states, for example, Russia. The European Union is also a single European entity which may raise additional questions related to the post-Brexit period. We know from history that the United Kingdom has had a special privileged relations in South Asia, and we have also to consider that there are other member states that are observers and they have their own agenda. For example, there are other countries in the region that would like to become closer friends to this international organization, and there is also, for example, China, which again could become more than it is now engaged. But again, there is a discussion on geopolitics and other questions related to Asian dynamics in international relations. But how does this cooperation act in practice? I took, for example, in this case, this is a newer update, the issue with support, emergency support in case of COVID-19. If we check, we'll find that there has been a lot of support, mainly in health sector, but also in other areas from the European Union. The response is based mainly on a package that has been announced at the beginning of April. The communication is available if we simply access this link, and it provides basically support globally but also in Asia and in South Asia, because it is one of the regions that requires further support for for the relief. There is also the global response that will come later, and also have to mention the support for global institutions, World Health Organization, for example, in this case, and this in the end could also serve and help the development of South Asian countries, and especially how they face the challenge of COVID-19 management. If we check the websites of the delegations to the European Union to different countries in this area, we'll find that the support is there. We'll find the sums, we'll find many information related to how big the package, the support package is, and what it supports. This is different from the support from member state to member state, but it is there. And we'll see, for example, that it goes to different sectors. For example, in the case of Sri Lanka, example here, there is health, agriculture, tourism. In the case of also Maldives, others. The outbreak of COVID-19 catch these countries in a not so good situation, mainly because they have issues related to the development of national health systems or national emergency response system, but also because they practically don't have the budgetary support to finance, for example, the procurement of protective equipment. Of course, in the past years, the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation has been in a situation in which its existence was challenged. Basically, the conflict between Pakistan and India represented a challenge, but in every crisis there is also an opportunity. And in the case of this regional organization, in March we have seen a meeting of the health ministries to discuss regionally the answers to the pandemic. They set up an emergency fund, and we see that all 8 countries had some pledges to support the reply to the crisis. We are moving now to the last part, the one on cooperation between the Central and Eastern Europe and South Asia. We can see that right now in the map their positioning on the global map. It is a cooperation that has a history but is not so well developed as in other cases. Some methodological aspects from our actions relates to the focus of this analysis on residential diplomatic missions with embassy rank. This allows us to distinguish between other types of representations, for example, consulates in case of residential representations, but even these are almost inexistent in those cases in which there is not an embassy. And it also allows us to distinguish from the non-residential diplomatic missions, which matters because let's give a practical examples. There are states many of them that do represent their interest in South Asia practically through the mission in New Delhi in India. All of them are present in India, and it matters. So practically they have relations. There is an established cooperation, but they do not engage so much, and they do not have a physical presence. There are different reasons for this. We won't enter into details. No CEU member states is present in all SAARC states. For example, we have the order of diplomatic coverage. Some of them they have rather 3 or 4 missions, one of which is India, as I said, and there are 4 countries in which the eastern part of the European Union is not there. Practically they are absent, and the states are Bangladesh, Bhutan, Maldives, and Nepal. We can see in the following maps the coverage for a better visual one. Important because we have in this map all South Asian members of the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, but Bulgaria in this case is present only in 3 with embassies: India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. The ones that are in a light blue are practically the states in which it is less present. In our analysis, it means that it does not have an embassy there. We are moving now forward to the case of Czechia, Czech Republic. Here again, we have a similar situation. Estonia is one of the cases in which it is present only in India, valid also for all Baltic states, and it is easier to understand why. Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, which surprisingly has one of the most developed diplomatic coverage in South Asia, Slovakia. We can sum up this exploratory endeavor with the following preliminary conclusions. First of all, regarding the European Union present in the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. The EU, since 2006, is an observer. It is a single organization that is an observer. The other ones are sovereign states. Also, it is a single European one for the moment. Its involvement with SAARC is rather limited, and not only limited, but it is project-based, and we haven't seen exactly regional cooperation to regional cooperation at the regional integration organization level in this case. There's also, comparative to other regional integration organizations or regional cooperation ones, there is no delegation of the EU in South Asia. This is different compared to other countries that where the European Union is present, and also is different related to other regions, Asian, for example, African Union, where there is a mission for the regional organization. Of course, in the future everything is possible, but given the current stalemate, we cannot expect overnight transition to a development of a delegation for this regional organization. In terms of the support in case of emergency, and we exemplified here with COVID-19, the support was provided in another track, not regional organization to regional organization, but one from regional organization, European Union, to each state from South Asia, and secondly from member states to other member states. There are examples in this area. Also, it is worth mentioning that there is a significant support in this area in terms of emergency response, health support, and other sectorial aspects that have been affected by COVID-19. We have this support, and it matters because there is this engagement and this relief that is provided to help the states to deal with a global pandemic. We move now to the Central and Eastern Europe in South Asia. Limited presence, as I mentioned, but because it is a limited presence, it also means that the EU presence has an added value. For example, especially for the citizens, but also for businesses, because they can simply, those that are not from a country that is there, can contact their EU delegation and find additional information. There are also countries from CE that are missing. The relation with Bangladesh is, in this case, specific. Other points that could be mentioned, but overall to this exploratory approach, is that not all EU big member states are present extensively. Some are missing from other parts, probably also the historical legacy, but this is a subject that has to be further proven. And there are also smaller ones that are there. For example, the Scandinavian countries. Questions arise from what will happen after Brexit. I mean, Brexit happened, but it is still now the transitional period. Of course, what opportunities will arise given the fact that SAARC started to move again after few years of limited activity and rather regress in terms of engagement and regional influence, despite having an infrastructure that has been developed over decades. That is from this presentation. It could be rather an introductory and, let's say, explorative action that could support further research. There are areas, as I highlighted a few of them in the previous minutes, and now I'm looking for questions. The topic isn't a marginal one in these studies, and I give again the examples from the beginning with the waves in the study of regionalisms and regions that proves that is gathering more and more attention. Thank you.